Gyro is an average teenager who cares about only two things: video games, and his childhood best friend and crush, Shiori Sakurazaka. Gyro hopes that they remain close forever, and he might just get a chance to take their relationship to a new level, especially since Gyro's high school planned on starting a course on marriage practical. A course where partners of the opposite sex would be paired together and asked to live together as husband and wife. Shiori tells Gyro that she would love to be paired with him since he was her only male friend and she didn't do too well with strangers. Gyro tells her that he also hopes that they're paired together. Gyro muses about the popular saying that first loves never work out and hopes that things work out differences between him and Shiori. But Gyro is unaware that Shiori likes him too. While others are nervous about who they'll be paired with, Gyro spends most of his time playing video games. Gyro's male best friend, a fellow video game lover, and the school outcast, Kamo, tells Gyro that he is envious of him. Later on, a teacher tells the class that while partners would be living together in the same house, they'll stay in separate bedrooms that can only be unlocked by the owner's fingerprints. That way, they wouldn't do anything unusual since they were still in high school. She also warns them not to get carried away and tells them that a sensor would be installed in each of their apartments. The sensor would detect whether or not the couple was getting along and award them positive or negative points depending on how well they got along. The partners for the marriage practical were finally announced, and Gyro was shocked to discover that his partner was none other than the school's diva, Watanabe. Before their pairing, Watanabe always ignored Gyro and treated him like dirt. She never let him get too close. Gyro also saw Watanabe as a wild partygoer who knew nothing more than to wear exposing clothing. After Watanabe discovered that Gyro was her fake husband, she dragged him by the shirt and yelled about how on earth they could have ended up paired together. Their points were suddenly deducted by 3 and Watanabe yanked Gyro by the shirt and demanded that he gets along with her. Gyro is surprised by her actions, but she finally explains that the reason for this is because the best couples ended up in a rank and had the opportunity to switch partners. Watanabe guesses that Gyro has a crush on Shiori since he was always following her around, but she laughs at this and tells him Shiori would never give him a chance. She also reveals that her crush, Minami, the hottest boy in school, was paired with Shiori and she wanted them to get in a rank so they could switch partners. The next day, Gyro spies Shiori and Minami walking home together while smiling lovingly at each other, and he bursts into tears. He goes home depressed and cries about how he could never win against Minami, but Watanabe tells him that they should pretend to be an actual married couple so that they can get in a rank and switch partners real fast. Gyro's friend Kamo arrives at that moment and asks if he's up for a trip to Aniroad. Gyro tells Kamo that he'll be with him soon, and Watanabe asks him to give her a goodbye kiss like married couples do, but Gyro refuses. Watanabe calls him all sorts of names and tells him that he'll die a virgin. This upsets Gyro and he presses his lips to hers. Watanabe is surprised because she expected him to kiss her forehead. As Gyro rushes off with Kamo, she suddenly realizes with shock that she enjoyed the kiss. Their points also return to 0 as the kiss counts as proof that they're getting along. The next day, Gyro's mind runs wild with thoughts as he wonders why Shiori suddenly hugged Minami. Later on, Gyro received a note asking him to drop by the faculty after classes with Watanabe. After classes, Gyro is seen seated on the steps while talking to Kamo when he notices Watanabe rushing off somewhere. Gyro tells Watanabe that they were asked to report to the faculty to discuss their marriage, but Watanabe tells him to go alone because she wants to visit a karaoke bar with Minami and her friends. Gyro tells her that they must go together, but Watanabe ignores him and leaves. Gyro is forced to report to the faculty alone, and he is warned that the marriage practical is a mandatory course, and if he and Watanabe do not get a good grade, they wouldn't graduate that year. Due to the rainy weather, Gyro is unable to go home and he is forced to return to the entrance steps. While Gyro was busy giving himself mental slaps for daydreaming about his wife, he is surprised when he is suddenly hugged by Shiori. Gyro is freaked out by the unexpected physical contact, but Shiori apologizes and tells him that it's because she was afraid of a bug. Gyro suddenly realizes that the reason why Shiori had hugged Minami earlier that day was because she saw a bug. Shiori complains that ever since Gyro had gotten married, he has stopped calling her by her first name, and she begs him to continue calling her by her first name, but he pauses midway. At that moment, Minami arrives with Shiori's umbrella and tells her that he recalled seeing it by the doorway of their home that morning and he had brought it to her because he realized that she was probably stuck in the rain. Gyro stares at Shiori and Minami wistfully as they leave, but he is soon joined by Watanabe, who scolds him for not taking Shiori to somewhere quiet where he could have some alone time with her. Later that night, Gyro is thrilled when Watanabe cooks omelette rice for him and he even offers to feed her, but Watanabe refuses. Right when Gyro least expects it, she leaps over the dining table and eats the food from his spoon. Gyro and Watanabe's faces draw closer and they are lost in the thrill of the moment, but before this escalates into something bigger, Gyro's phone rings at that moment and he scurries off to his bedroom to take the call from the unexpected caller, who happens to be Kamo. Later on, Gyro has vivid dreams of Shiro asking him to kiss her in his sleep, but he is suddenly jerked awake by Watanabe, whom he now realizes he had been trying to kiss. Gyro is relieved when he realizes that Watanabe had no idea of what he had almost done. Watanabe shakes him up and orders him to follow her to the living room, and Gyro follows her grudgingly. As soon as they reach the living room, Watanabe puts on the TV and plays a horror movie, but Gyro notices that Watanabe is scared and switches off the TV. Watanabe tries to convince Gyro to watch the horror film with her, but Gyro refuses. Gyro considers giving in to her request after Watanabe explains that they'll earn more points for getting over their fear together. She also tells him that she had purchased matching nightgowns because it'll also help them in gaining more points, but Gyro refuses to wear one because it'll make them look way too much like a married couple. After Watanabe calls him virgin cunt among a host of other derogatory names, Gyro gives in to her wishes and turns the light off before undressing. Whole Watanabe undresses. Gyro realizes that Watanabe is scared out of her wits, so he switches on his flashlight just before Watanabe could issue a warning. Watanabe is angered at the fact that Virgin Kun just saw her inappropriately dressed and lunges kicks at him while calling him a pervert. Gyro tries to defend himself and grabs her hands. Unfortunately, this only helps in escalating the situation, and Gyro scurries away before any irreparable damage is done. After he was sure that they were both fully dressed, Gyro tried turning on the light, but he realizes that there was a power outage. Gyro is surprised when Watanabe asks him to keep her company because she is scared, but he lends her a shoulder to lean on. Watanabe eventually discovers a scented candle that a friend gave her and lights it before falling asleep with her head on Gyro's shoulder. Gyro muses about how cute and innocent she is when she sleeps before falling asleep himself. But Gyro fails to realize that Watanabe was still awake and had heard all his compliments. The next day, Gyro wakes up with a cold and skips classes. He harbors dreams of Watanabe skipping classes to treat him, but he realizes that Watanabe is probably the least likely person to do that. He also realizes that Shiori would probably be more likely to do such a selfless thing. The doorbell rings at that moment and Gyro rushes over to open the door, but he is disappointed to see Shiori. But as soon as Shiori tells him that Watanabe sent her to take care of him, Gyro is thrilled. Shiori treats Gyro and cooks for him, and he recalls how he had once considered telling her of his true feelings. However, Gyro stopped after Shiori asked him to promise her that they'll remain friends for life. Meanwhile, Watanabe's friends tell her of the rumors that Shiori has been avoiding Minami, but if she actually gives him a chance they might end up together. After all, she was a sweet and cute-faced girl. But they're surprised when Watanabe agrees with them, especially when she had always been crazy about Minami. But unknown to them, Watanabe is too busy reliving the unexpected goodbye kiss that Gyro gave her the other day. After a while, Watanabe asks Gyro what guys like about women, and Gyro recalls how she had cooked omelette rice for him the other day, so he tells her that men like home-cooked meals, especially when it came from a woman like her, cause it would be so unexpected. Watanabe decides to use this strategy to win Minami's heart, but she asks Gyro to try out the dishes before she sends them to Minami. Gyro tells her that he enjoyed her cooking, but he also reveals that most guys have a sweet tooth and he would have preferred the side dishes to be on the sweeter side. But Watanabe tells him that Minami is more mature and would probably prefer less sugary delicacies. Later on, Kamo notices Gyro eating home-cooked meals and realizes that Watanabe had cooked for Gyro because Gyro was a terrible cook. Kamo couldn't help but feel jealous about Gyro's lifestyle, which felt like it came straight from an erotic manga. During the weekend, Watanabe cooks an extravagant meal for Minami and rushes off to meet him, but she meets Shiori by the doorway, who reveals that she had brought some sweet treats for Gyro. Shiori further reveals that Minami has a sweet tooth, and Watanabe becomes depressed and ends up staying at home. After Shiori leaves, Watanabe folds herself up and cries about how she would never be able to compete with Shiori. But Gyro tells her that she's an amazing girl with some good points as well. Watanabe asks him to tell her about some of her good qualities, but the only thing Gyro raved about is how appealing her body is. Gyro realizes his mistake too late and apologizes, but Watanabe makes a fuss which leads to a cat fight, and they end up in an awkward situation. They almost take things to the next level, But Gyro realizes that Watanabe's hands are shaky and realizes that she wasn't half as experienced as she claimed to be, so he tells her that things like this should be done with someone she loves. But Watanabe takes it the wrong way and asks if it was because he was in love with Shiori that he couldn't take their relationship to the next level. She also tells him that they should stop pretending to be a married couple. For the next few days, Gyro watches as their point reduces all the way down to 0. Their weekly grade is posted the following day and Shiori is surprised to see Gyro failing. She calls him to ask if things weren't working out with Watanabe and he explains that they were having a misunderstanding, but Shiori tells him that Watanabe would understand and cheers him up. On getting home, Gyro decides to patch things up with Watanabe, so he knocks on her room door and asks if he could speak with her. Watanabe asks him to come in, but surprisingly, she covers her body. Gyro apologizes for what happened the other day, and Watanabe feels even worse, but her mood changes for the better after she learns that Gyro had only stopped himself the other day because he had realized that she was a virgin. Gyro asks Watanabe if they could go back to being married, and Watanabe places both hands on his cheeks and draws him closer before telling him she likes him a lot. Gyro is shocked and his heart immediately goes into hyperdrive, but Watanabe bursts into laughter and tells him she was only joking. But after Gyro leaves, Watanabe realizes with a start that she had just told Gyro that she likes him a lot. Later on, the other guys are playing basketball during PE while Kamo and Gyro join the crowd of onlookers. Watanabe's friends can't help but talk about their love interests, but unknown to her, Gyro is stealing glances at her and Shiori simultaneously. While Shiori and Watanabe take turns in admiring Minami's skills on the court, the ball is flung toward the far end of the room where Kami and Gyro are both seated, but Minami arrives just in time to save the day. Gyro is struck by jealousy at how the two girls he likes seem to be enamored by Minami, so he leaves the court with a downcast face. Shiori notices this and asks if he had another fight with Watanabe, and Gyro considers whether or not to tell her that the reason why he was depressed was because it seemed like she was starting to fall in love with Minami. But instead, Gyro asks Minami if she plans on staying with Shiori for the rest of the marriage practical. Shiori tells Gyro that she wouldn't mind switching partners with him, but whilst this occurs, Watanabe was stuck in the store returning towels as a punishment for speaking too loudly on court. Minami meets her on his way to drop off some equipment, but before he leaves, Watanabe asks him if he planned on switching partners at any point during the marriage practical, but he tells her that he has no plans of doing so. He realizes that Watanabe is crying and moves forward to wipe her tears before whispering something in her ear. Watanabe is surprised that she is relieved because she was still in love with Minami and not Gyro. She suddenly wonders why she felt relieved, but Kamo notices her moment with Minami and assumes that they were kissing. He rushes off to tell Gyro, who was just about to confess his feelings to Shiori, but before Gyro could ask more questions, Watanabe and Minami come out of the store. Gyro notices that Watanabe's cheeks are flushed and realizes that something must have occurred. Gyro is ticked by this and he takes a long time before returning home. He arrives home cranky but is surprised to see Watanabe acting depressed. Watanabe asks why he's acting weird and Gyro asks if she randomly kisses guys whenever she's angry. Watanabe realizes that he's jealous and bursts out laughing before explaining that Minami had only been trying to brush the dust off her face. Gyro realizes his mistake and blushes in embarrassment, but Watanabe tells him that she is not that cheap before telling him that she was heartbroken. Watanabe burst into tears and Gyro patted her while she cried. After she had calmed down, Gyro suddenly realized that Watanabe's body was pressed against his. Watanabe realizes his inappropriate thoughts and fights to push him off her, but they end up in another weird situation. Later on, Gyro is stunned when Watanabe wears his shirt as it has a certain effect on him. He asks her to wear something else or cover herself. But Watanabe, realizing the effect she was having on him, called him a repressed virgin and laughed at his expense before revealing that the goodbye kiss he had given her the other day was her first kiss. She suddenly starts shaking him up and complains that he was a bad kisser, and no one should ever have such a horrendous experience for a first kiss, but Gyro zones out due to all the physical contact that he had gotten that night. He is also surprised to discover that he is Watanabe's first kiss. Later on, Shiori is seen talking with her female best friend, Mei. Mei surmises that Shiori's plan to jump Gyro first thing in the morning had failed, so she decided to create another opportunity for Shiori. Mei and Gyro were on duty for cleaning the class that morning, but Mei switched places with Shiori to allow Shiori to carry out her plan. She urges Shiori to kiss Gyro or perform any kind of physical activity to ensure that he realizes Shiori's feelings for him, but Shiori implies that she doesn't have the confidence to go all the way. However, she decides to push her luck. Gyro was pleasantly surprised to discover that he was on board duty with Shiori, and they discussed for a while, with the duo looking for every opportunity to touch each other. After they discuss about old friends and fun childhood memories for a while, Shiori asks Gyro to close his eyes and lean his face toward hers, and Gyro suddenly realizes that she was asking him to kiss her, but before he could press his lips to hers, Shiori freaks out and stops him. Gyro apologizes while thinking that Shiori is creeped out by him, but Shiori tells Gyro she was trying to clean the chalk dust on him before walking away. But unknown to Gyro, Watanabe had passed by earlier and had seen him brushing his hand against Shiori's hand on the board. Later that night, Watanabe noticed Gyro standing on the balcony with a sad look on his face, and she realizes that things probably didn't go well with Shiori. She teases him about it and asks why he never calls her by her first name, but Gyro feels too embarrassed to say it. Watanabe tells him that there are some times when she doesn't feel confident, and if he were around at that time she would like it if he calls her by her first name. Gyro tells her that her name Ikari, which means light and is written with the character of a star, suits her, and Watanabe blushes, but Gyro suddenly freaks out and takes back his words, which results in an outburst from Watanabe. Watanabe asks him to stop apologizing for every little thing cause it makes her feel like she's the only one in love, and Gyro is surprised at her confession. But Watanabe realizes her mistake and tells him that she was only saying it because of the marriage practical. She runs off to her room and locks the door before pondering on her words. Later that week, Gyro's homeroom teacher announces that a test will be conducted to assess all couples because they had stopped focusing on schoolwork. Shiori helps Mei to prepare for the test while Gyro forces Watanabe to study. Watanabe is reluctant because she realizes that if they both pass this exam, Gyro would switch partners and get married to Shiori. Gyro realizes that Watanabe learned better when she was praised, so he indulges her till she's finally capable of solving problems on her own. Watanabe asks if he's only doing this so he could get back to Shiori, but Gyro explains that he only wanted to help Ikari with something since it felt like she was the only one who had been helping him since they got mock married. After they wrote the test, Gyro was surprised when Watanabe suddenly started calling him his last name and started withdrawing from him. She still talked to him and smiled at him, but she wore less revealing clothing and acted distant. Gyro was surprised by the sudden change in attitude, so he decided to search online for the plausible reason. However, Kamo catches him in the process and laughs at this. He tells him that he of all people should know that Google can't predict the thoughts of a girl like Watanabe. They take a walk to the playground and they spy on Shiori's friend, Mei, who was being confessed to by another girl. Mei tells her that she's sorry she failed to notice, but she couldn't see her in that way, before hugging the girl and thanking her for loving her. Kamo and Gyro are instantly filled with jealousy at how Mei seemed to have more luck with the girls than they did. But later on, Gyro ponders on Mei's words and wonders how they could apply to him. What exactly had he failed to notice? He suddenly recalled that Watanabe had asked him to call her by her first name at a time when she felt less confident. Later that day, Watanabe tells Gyro that she bought a shampoo for him and she uses it to wash his hair. While Watanabe dries his hair, Gyro calls her by her first name, but she doesn't hear him because of the sound of the hair dryer. When she finally hears him, Watanabe sits down meekly and asks Gyro why he's calling her. Gyro realizes that she is now calling him by his first name and moving her hand in circles, so he repeatedly calls her while trying hard not to grin like a maniac. Watanabe leans on Gyro and asks him to continue calling her by her first name. She also asks why he never bothered to call her by her first name before, especially when she did the same. The next day, Shiori collapses in school and Mei tells Gyro to visit her in the hospital. She also hands him Shiori's favorite snacks. But before Gyro arrives at Shiori's ward, Mei sends Shiori a text and tells her to make a move now or Watanabe might succeed in winning Gyro's heart. Gyro arrives at Shiori's ward and is devastated to find out that Minami had already dropped her favorite snacks for her. Gyro makes a move to leave, but Shiori stops him with idle talk before complaining about how she was making Minami fail their marriage practical because she just couldn't open up to guys. Gyro tells her to keep trying and that things will work out, and Shiori asks if she could practice being a married couple with him. Shiori kneels and asks Gyro to kiss her, but before he touches his lips to hers, she asks him to stop. Natsumi, Watanabe's friend, enters the ward at that moment and Gyro is so startled that he accidentally falls on Shiori. They end up in an awkward position and Natsumi returns to Watanabe and her friend to tell her that two people were doing it in the sick bay. Watanabe texts Gyro at that moment to find out why he hasn't been replying to her texts, but she is surprised when he tells her that he's in the sick bay with Shiori. Watanabe realizes that he is probably the one of the people who Natsumi was talking about. She is hurt by this and heads to the cafe where Minami is working. Minami's friend tells him that Watanabe is in a bad mood and asks him to give her extra cream on her ice cream, and Minami delivers it with a note saying he hopes it cheers her day. Watanabe realizes that her depressed mood was visible on her face and she decides to head back home, but by the time she gets home, Gyro had fallen asleep on the sofa while waiting for her. Watanabe tries waking Gyro, but when he doesn't wake up, she undresses and sleeps beside him. The next morning, Gyro is shocked to see Watanabe sleeping naked beside him. He wakes her up and forces her to put on some clothes, but she asks him why he's acting so uptight when he was the one who undressed her. Gyro's eyes almost pop out of their sockets as he asks if anything had happened between them, and Watanabe accuses him of disvirgining her. Gyro tells her he's sorry that it didn't happen with Minami, the guy whom she actually loves, and he tells her it was his first time too. Watanabe realizes that he had not slept with Shiori at the hospital ward the other day, and she tells Gyro that she was just kidding before bursting into laughter at his embarrassment. Gyro asks her not to joke about things like that, but Watanabe closes his ears and tells him that she hates that she couldn't do things with him without worrying about how he was supposed to do them with his first love. She also tells him she hates and resents him. The following day, Kamo is surprised when Gyro rushes out during break when he would usually ogle both his fake wife and Shiori. He asks if something is wrong between him and Watanabe, but Gyro denies it. Watanabe discusses with her friends during break time, but they suddenly tell her that something has been on their minds. Both of them are reluctant to talk, but they finally play rock, paper, scissors, and Natsumi goes first. She asks if Watanabe is in love with Gyro, and Watanabe is reluctant at first, but she eventually reveals that she has feelings for him. They ask her how she feels about Minami, but Watanabe tells them that she didn't want to get in the midst of whatever Minami had going with Shiori. Watanabe's friends tell her that there's nothing wrong with her liking Gyro. Besides, he might reciprocate her feelings, but they also tell her that just because she thinks Shiori has feelings for Minami doesn't mean that she should give up on him. Later on, Watanabe's friends complain about how she's always placing others' interests ahead of hers, and they decide to help her. They arrange for a date with Minami at the fireworks festival, and Watanabe is excited to go. She purchases a yukata and asks Gyro to tie the rope for her, but Gyro acts grumpy all through. Watanabe arrives at the festival with her friends and they search all over for Minami, but they meet Terafune, Minami's friend and colleague, who tells them that Minami won't be able to make it because customers were trooping in at his workplace. Terafune tries flirting with Watanabe, which only makes her more miserable, but Natsumi gets two other guys to assist her in getting rid of him. Watanabe walks along the streets alone, but she is suddenly excited when she sees Minami. Watanabe wonders why Minami lied that he wouldn't be able to attend the festival when he was clearly here. She suddenly realizes that Minami is with a lady who turns out to be Shiori. Watanabe is hurt that Minami lied to her just to be with Shiori, and she runs back home in tears. But unknown to her, Minami had gone grocery shopping with Shiori and was only escorting her to the location of the fireworks festival before leaving for his workplace. While this occurred, Gyro was at home thinking about whether or not Watanabe was enjoying herself with Minami, and he wonders if her idea of having fun is through sharing kisses. He is suddenly filled with rage and jealousy, and he steps out to the balcony for some fresh air. Watanabe calls him at that moment, and Gyro contemplates whether or not to pick up her call. But after he picks it up, he is surprised to hear her crying. He wonders what was wrong and asks her to tell him her location, but she only keeps crying before hanging up the call. Gyro heads straight for the doorway while hoping to meet Watanabe in a secluded corner at the fireworks festival, but he is surprised when he sees her crying by the door. Watanabe blurts out that a relationship with Minami won't be possible after all, and she starts crying immediately afterward. Gyro walks over to her and cleans her face, and Watanabe stares up at him with tear-filled eyes. Gyro hugs her and pats her back, and they remain in that position for a long while. The fireworks start and Watanabe and Gyro watch them from the balcony. Watanabe asks Gyro if he was jealous at the thought of her and Minami spending the night together, and she is surprised when he doesn't deny it. Gyro is startled when Watanabe asks him to tie her yukata in a ribbon, since that was the original style he had wanted, but Gyro doesn't get the style on his first trial. Watanabe searches for a tutorial video on Gyro's phone, but the phone slips from her grasp. Gyro catches the phone with his arms around her and Watanabe holds them in place. The fireworks display starts as they hold themselves in an embrace, but they cherish this moment as they realize that it'll probably be the first and the last time that they'll watch the fireworks as husband and wife from this balcony. The following week, the marriage practical results for the month are released, and Watanabe and Gyro come in at 13th place. They are hurt that they came in just 3 places short of a rank, but Watanabe secretly smiles to herself at the thought of spending one more month as Gyro's wife. Later on, Gyro is taking a bath in the shower when Watanabe suddenly barges in and asks him to kill a spider. Watanabe gets his clothes and heads straight for the living room only to discover that the spider had already escaped. Gyro makes a move to return to his room, but Watanabe stops him and tells him to stay by her side until the spider reappears. Gyro acts as Watanabe's bodyguard for the rest of the day, even going so far as to wait in front of the bathroom door while she was inside. Later on, Gyro notices the tiny spider which had initially frightened Watanabe on the wall, but Watanabe notices it at the same time and freaks out. This results in them ending up in another awkward situation, but Gyro manages to save his soul and kills the spider. Meanwhile, Shiori tells Minami that a friend of hers mistakenly kissed someone she loves, but she isn't sure the person reciprocates her feelings. Minami is so stunned that he pours his tea over his body, but he tells her that she should have confidence in herself. Shiori panics and tells him that she's only asking for a friend, but Minami laughs at this and tells her to relay the message. He also realizes that Shiori was talking about herself, but he says nothing about this. Minami tells Shiori that he wouldn't come home that night so she could have a sleepover with her friend. Later on, Shiori helps Mei with picking out clothes for the summer, but Mei reaches over the table and tucks Shiori's hair behind her ear before telling her to make her into a version of herself that Shiori would love after all. She would be wearing whatever outfit Shiori picks to their next movie date. Shiori urges Mei to date someone because she believes that Mei would be an amazing person to go out with, but she is unaware of Mei's feelings. Mei's mock husband walks in at that moment and urges them to have a sleepover and sleep together on the same bed. Mei blushes furiously as she realizes that her mock husband and Minami were working together to grow her and Shiori's relationship. But little do they know that the guy Shiori actually likes is Gyro. Shiori goes out to purchase ingredients for her and Mei's dinner, but she passes by the exact same restaurant where Gyro and Kamo are. She remembers her kiss with Gyro and wonders if Gyro hated her because she was a bad kisser. Meanwhile, Kamo tries to kiss Gyro because he's pretty sure that he'll never have the chance to kiss anyone else. Gyro suddenly notices Shiori and he rushes over to explain himself to her. Gyro is unaware that the restaurant's windows are tinted and Shiori had absolutely no idea of what had almost occurred, so he apologizes for the kiss and tells her that Kamo was just trying to insinuate things. Shiori realizes that Gyro wasn't talking about their kiss and asks Gyro if he hated her because of it, but Gyro tries to apologize for it and Shiori tells him not to because she was actually happy to practice with him. Their faces draw closer in the night light and they almost share another kiss, but they're interrupted by the shrieks of a cat. A few days before summer break, Kamo walks up to Gyro and tells him that he had applied for a live-in summer job on his behalf. However, it would only take a duration of 3 days. Gyro shrieks about this and asks Kamo why he would get him a job at a cafe where the popular kids often hang out, but Kamo tells him that he wouldn't survive alone among the popular kids. Gyro doesn't realize that the job flyer has fallen from his hand, but Shiori walks over and helps him pick it up. She realizes that it's the same cafe where she and Mei were planning on working, so she tells him that she'll also be working there over the summer. Gyro is excited to go because he'll get to see Shiori in pajamas amongst other perverted things. He decides to tell Watanabe about his summer job, but she tells him that she got one as well. Watanabe shows Gyro the bikini that she plans on wearing in the summer, but Gyro asks her to wear something more concealing or hang out with male friends that could protect her. Surprisingly, Watanabe tells him that the bikini is for his eyes alone and she has something more concealing that she would wear while working. She shows Gyro the flyer for her summer job and Gyro is surprised to see that they'll be working in the same place. Almost everyone from school apply for the live-in summer job and Shiori tells Mei that she'll have to put in twice the effort, especially since Watanabe and other party girls were around. Mei asks Gyro to help Shiori out in the kitchen and they almost have another kissing encounter, but Watanabe's friends interrupt their moment. During their free time, Kamo and Gyro notice the other kids going out to the beach, so they head out to join them. Gyro is surprised to see Watanabe wearing a one-piece suit, but Gyro isn't the only one who is surprised, as Kamo mentions that Watanabe is wearing something more concealing when she was usually the first person to show more skin. He implies that something is going on and Gyro wonders why Watanabe opted for a one-piece suit when she could have worn her bikini. Shiori arrives with Mei in tow and Gyro couldn't help but notice that her one-piece suit isn't fully covered. She asks Gyro and Kamo to join her in building a sand castle. Gyro realizes that this might be his last chance to see Shiori dressed provocatively, so he tags along. After they're done building the sand castle, 2 people are asked to purchase some items from the store and Watanabe and Gyro are nominated. Gyro leaves Watanabe to collect the items they had already paid for, but by the time he came back, 2 guys were forcing themselves on Watanabe. Gyro confronts her assaulters and saves her, and Watanabe is touched by his act of kindness, but she pushes him toward the others while hiding the tears that were threatening to fall down her face. The boys and girls take showers, but after their shower, Watanabe realizes that Gyro has gotten sunburned, so she offers to apply sun protection lotion. While applying the lotion, she complains that Gyro has stopped calling her by her name and he has also been talking to other girls and getting more distant. Natsumi walks in on them at that moment, and Gyro pretends that he was asking if Watanabe wanted to get anything at the convenience store. Watanabe and her friend walk down the corridor, but she sends a threatening text to Gyro and tells him to meet her by the convenience store. Gyro walks to the convenience store and meets Watanabe waiting for him. Watanabe takes off her coat and reveals the bikini that she had promised him would be for his eyes only. Gyro is stunned by this and asks why she was annoyed that he had been talking to other girls, and why she so badly wanted him to call her by name even though there were no censors around to judge their marriage. But Mei and Shiori arrive at the store at that moment, and Gyro accidentally collapses on Watanabe while trying to hide. The pressure of Watanabe's half-naked body is way too much for Gyro, and he passes out due to heat stroke. Gyro wakes up and meets himself in a hospital. He returns to the others the next morning and sees Shiori wearing her pajamas. Gyro is filled with jealousy as he realizes how lucky Minami is to see her in her pajamas every night. He heads over to the bathroom and brushes his teeth with a depressed look on his face, but Watanabe arrives and notices his surly expression. She asks why he has a sad look on his face and teasingly asks if it's because of what happened the other night before rubbing her chest against his arm. Gyro throws a coughing fit and turns red in the face, and Watanabe walks away laughing. Later that day, Gyro and Shiori are on kitchen duty, and Shiori tells him of the test of confidence that was always held on the beach every summer. Male-female pairs were usually chosen, and whoever arrived first was considered to have won the test of confidence. Shiori tells Gyro that she would probably cause a lot of trouble to whoever she is paired with, because she gets scared easily, but Gyro tells her that he wouldn't mind being paired with her since he already knew that she was easily spooked and was already used to her. Later that night, Gyro and Shiori take the test of confidence and they manage to arrive at their starting point on time. Watanabe and Minami are paired together, but while they walk together, Minami leaves Watanabe briefly. Watanabe walks off on her own and gets lost, and rain starts falling. She falls on the forest grounds and bursts into tears at how she was of no use and was always depending on everyone. The others are concerned about Minami and Watanabe's whereabouts, but Natsumi tells them not to call them since they were probably in the middle of something. Gyro takes off to look for them and Shiori follows after him. Meanwhile, the resounding thunder only serves in making Watanabe more scared. A torchlight and a strange figure suddenly appear in front of her and she screams out Gyro's name, but it turns out to be Minami. Minami leads her to a gazebo and asks them to wait till the rain stops before returning to the others. After Minami informs the others of their whereabouts, he apologizes to Watanabe for not being. Gyro and Watanabe tries correcting him and professing her feelings for him, but Minami stops her and reveals that he had known for a long while that she had a crush on him, but he couldn't reciprocate her feelings because he couldn't get his mind off his unrequited love. He also tells her that he's relieved she loves someone that would see her for the amazing person she is, but he's sorry for not returning her feelings. Watanabe is surprisingly mature about this, and she asks him not to apologize because the feelings she had for him had made her incredibly happy whenever she saw him. She also voices her worries that Gyro might still be in love with his first love, Shiori. While this occurs, Gyro realizes that Minami would have probably found Watanabe and sits on a bench in the park. He tells Shiori about how he's such a loser and how he shouldn't have bothered to search for Watanabe when she was with Minami. Shiori is hurt at how Gyro ignores her attempts at confessing her feelings to him, so she asks him that if he truly isn't in love with Watanabe, he should show her a side to him that he had never shown Watanabe. Shiori hugs Gyro and bursts into tears, but Gyro turns her face to his and wipes her tears before touching his lips to hers. Later on, we discover that after the kiss, Shiori had apologized out of embarrassment and acted weird before leaving Gyro for the others. But Akari and the others realize that something scandalous must have happened between them. Watanabe visits a shrine that is notorious for fulfilling people's romantic desires and sends a wish to the gods. Shiori realizes that Gyro had kissed Watanabe before kissing her and wonders if he only saw her as a childhood friend. Gyro also wonders if Shiori had ever had any feelings for him, but he says nothing to her even though they should have become official after their little encounter. Gyro heads to a manga store to get some of the latest comic books and clear his head, but he is surprised to see Shiori, who is trying to get some comic books for her brother. The rain starts falling right when they're about to leave and they both have no umbrellas to use. Shiori invites Gyro to her apartment and all Gyro can think about is how pretty she was and what a fine stature she has. Watanabe excuses herself and wonders if Gyro was feeling bored or hating on her for insinuating their kiss. They decide to take a walk and they have so many fun moments. Gyro decides to confess his feelings to Shiori, but Shiori shows him a group picture that they took at the beach and the sight of Watanabe makes Gyro change his mind. Gyro heads back home, bored and angry at himself for not conveying his true feelings. He suddenly receives a message from Watanabe who tells him she's bored and asks him on a date. Shiori initially believes that Watanabe wouldn't show up, but he is surprised when she arrives in a dress more concealing than she usually wore. Watanabe explains that she had bought it because she realized that he wasn't comfortable with her wearing revealing clothing. Gyro was stunned by her kind gesture and they spend the rest of the day exploring the city. They visit a pet store and take a picture with a cat which Watanabe calls cute, but Gyro thinks they look like a family and Watanabe suggests that they adopt a cat to get more points during the new semester. After visiting a cafe among numerous other fun places, Watanabe and Gyro decide to part ways, but Watanabe suddenly recalls something and asks Gyro to escort her to a shrine. Gyro wonders why she has to visit the shrine, but Watanabe tells him nothing about it. On their way to the shrine, Watanabe runs into Shiori and informs her that she's going to the shrine. Shiori tells her that she's headed in the same direction and Shiori challenges her to a race. On reaching the shrine, they meet an old man named Gyro who is accompanied by his wife. They laugh at how the old man reminds them of Gyro and Gyro arrives at that exact same moment. The trio take a coin out of their pockets and flip it at the same time before making a wish. Gyro faces a tough path as he must now choose between his first love and his fake wife. What do you think happens in the next season and who will Gyro end up with? All will be revealed in due time. In the meantime, kindly click the like and the bell button for instant notifications on new videos. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.